Something very interesting has happened over the last few days. As you probably know and you've probably seen, Jeff Shreves of the Sunday Supplement has made an apology, an open apology to West Ham United for comments that appeared in the same show the previous week. Now, this is very, very interesting. I just want to look into it. And the reason it's interesting is because what you basically have is an apology which has been prompted by a rumour that there might be some legal action. You may well remember on the Friday before, the Daily Mail ran a story by saying that West Ham United were going to get their solicitors, their lawyers, to look into comments that have been made by Matt Law on the Sunday Supplement. If you don't know what the comments are, Matt Law basically said the training ground was a series of porter cabins. He said there were better training grounds in League One. There was poor infrastructure in the club. The fact that we rented our stadium, we were tenants. We had the worst training ground in the Premier League. I think I've said all that. We only had one scout. David Moyes wanted to bring in Stuart Pearce, and he had been rejected. Alan Irvine was his only other member of staff there, because Alan Stubbs had turned us down. And the club was a shambles. And there was also some comments about people having their fingers in the tills. So, that's what happened. There was the threat, the suggestion, the rumour in the Daily Mail of legal action. And then it fast forward to last Sunday, and you have the apology and the retraction of what had been said. Now, this is absolutely fascinating stuff, because Sky Sports West Ham's biggest customer. It's not you and it's not me, much as we'd like it to be, much as we should be that important. The fans aren't that important anymore. Basically, the people that buy most stuff off West Ham are Sky Sports. The domestic rights Sky Sports have both at the current time and historically have the biggest deal. At the moment, they have 4 or 5 packages. BT have a couple, something like that. Amazon have just dipped their toe into water this season. But the reason that this is really, really interesting is because, in essence, they're threatening legal action, or there has been rumoured threatened legal action against their biggest customer. Now, I don't know about you, but if I took legal action or threatened it or forced an apology from one of my customers, it would completely change the dynamic of the relationship. And that's what I want to look into a little bit. But also, I'm going to look at the comments and what I think maybe the owners, maybe West Ham, whoever has instigated this, exactly what they're being sensitive about. And the key is in what Jeff Shreves read out. I mean, I've got it written down here. I mean, my point on it really is they seem to be demanding a higher level of scrutiny and accuracy in Sky Sports' comments than they're willing to accept about their own comments. So they're saying to Sky, you better be very, very precise in what you're saying. Yet they're allowed to say world-class team at a world-class stadium. That's fine. That doesn't have the same scrutiny. David Gold is allowed to say the seats can be no further from the pitch than they are at Upton Park. Not the same scrutiny that they expect from the Sunday Supplement. I mean, you actually got to be very careful with your words these days, of course. How many times have I said the seats are a mile from the pitch at the Olympic Stadium? Of course, they're not a mile from the pitch. I mean, you could park a bus in there, couldn't you? Let's be fair, but they're not a mile from the pitch. So let's be very careful what we say as we progress through this video. But Jeff Shreves, you'll know him if you watch Sky Sports a lot. Very affable, very, very good presenter. You can only imagine the conversation in the production meeting before this programme. Every programme on telly will have a production meeting before the programme goes live. The producer, like everybody, the writers, everybody involved will sit down and they will discuss what they're going to talk about in the hour's show. I'd imagine when Jeff was told, Jeff, we're not starting the show, it's not going to be about the transfer window, it's not going to be about the results from the weekend, we need you to kick off the show with an apology to West Ham. We need you to put it right. I would imagine he was very uncomfortable about that. And quite frankly, as far as I could see, he looked uncomfortable. It didn't look the normal jovial Jeff, that's for sure. He was clearly reading from a script. And he went on to say, alluded to the previous week, said that West Ham had a net spend of 240 million. That we'd spent over 1.5 million on scouts over the last year. Invested 10 million in the training ground. That Stuart Pearce wasn't vetoed by the board. The comment about everybody having their hands in the tills was directed at the players and the management, and was at pains to stress that the redevelopment of St Andrews was a lot better than had been suggested, because St Andrews had 3 new stands built and had won some award from the Birmingham Council. St Andrews, for those of you that don't know, of course, is Birmingham City's ground. Birmingham City being the club that Gold, Sullivan and Brady previously ran. Whilst all of those things may well be factually correct, I do think they warrant further investigation. The net spend one is quite clear. They're saying our net spend is 240 million. I'm guessing it must be because they wouldn't have said it. I guess one of 2 things has happened here. In my guess is as much that they did receive a legal letter, or the club said, if you don't rectify this, you're going to receive a legal letter and we're going to pursue this. At that point, I guess if it's a legal letter, I don't know. Did they have to prove that there's a 240 million net spend? We have to assume that it's the truth. That's what's been said. So they reported that. Absolutely fine. If that's it, great. I mean, we still find ourselves where we find ourselves in the league, but £240 million has been spent. What they're saying is, we spent loads of money. Okay, that's fine. The spending on 1.5 million over the course of a year in scouts I found very interesting, because that wasn't Matt Law's accusation. Matt Law said, as I understand it, what did he say? I think at the moment they have 1 scout. Well, that's very different, isn't it? I think what he meant to say was they have 1 first team scout. So when West Ham was seeking the clarification, why didn't they turn around and say, can you please correct that? We have 10 scouts, or we have 5 scouts, whatever the case may be. Why justify that they spent 1.5 million on scouts? Because I don't dispute that. I would imagine Hugh Sloss is considered to be a scout. Well, we know he was on, I think, £1 million odd a year. So the paper said anyway. We know Hugh Sloss's son was a scout. And we know that Manuel Pellegrini's son was also a scout. They're possibly still on the books. I don't discount that they earned 1.5 million last year, but that wasn't really the accusation. The accusation was that we only have 1 scout now. And the point is, and here's the gist of what's missed, the point is we have far less scouts than everybody else in the Premier League. That's the point. The whole point that Matt Law was trying to say here is we're a shambles compared to other clubs in the Premier League. The second point, we've invested 10 million on the training ground, both at Chadwell Heath and Rush Green. I absolutely believe that. In fact, I'm pretty sure that that's the case. But what they didn't say, again, if I was seeking to get that comment down, Matt Law says they've got one of the worst training grounds in the Premier League. There's a series of porter cabins there. What I would expect them to then turn around and say, Sky, would be, we have no porter cabins and we do not have one of the worst grounds in the Premier League. That's not the retracted statement. It's we've invested 10 million, which has been invested over 2 separate training grounds. Well, of course, that may well be true. But the point of the matter is, everybody else, not everybody else, but you've got teams like Wolves, you've got Leicester, spending 150 million, 100 million on their training grounds. Again, we're not where we're supposed to be at. Remember the promises that of next level. We weren't meant to be scratching and scrimping around. So again, I don't think it's really the point that Matt was making here. We probably do still have, comparatively, a not very good training ground. The other point about Stuart Pearce. Well, I mean, you're going to have to pick and choose who you start to believe in. What I do find interesting is, Stuart Pearce said on TalkSport that David Moyes wanted him as his assistant manager or a first team coach, whatever the title may be. But David Sullivan had said no because he was unhappy because when David Moyes' team were released last time, Stuart Pearce was critical of David Sullivan. And so Stuart Pearce said on the radio, I think that's why he didn't want me back. So Stuart Pearce says that's the case. The club are saying that's not the case. Well, there's 2 different stories. It's up to you. You can believe one or you can believe one or the other. What I do find really interesting about this is if that was so... If that was to the point to be litigious, was not now against the Sunday Supplement, was against Stuart Pearce, was against Talk Sport, surely, because it was actually said on Talk Sport platform by Stuart Pearce. Why correct the Sunday Supplement and Matt Law for reporting something that happened on Talk Sport? That's a funny one. If you're going to go for that then. Again, I don't know how much scrutiny's put up for that. I don't know. You're going to have to decide whether you believe the club or David Sullivan's version of the story or Stuart Pearce's version of the story. That's up to you, but I did find it very interesting. I think actually you're not tackling it. I don't think I've even tackled any of these correctly. Everyone having their hands in the tills is a bizarre one anyway. I don't know why you'd get sensitive about that. I don't know why you'd feel the need to correct it. Everybody knows this term. This is a term about shop workers. It's not a term about the boss. The term is about when the boss's back is turned or when the boss is not in the shop. The workers have their hands in the tills. Why seek to clarify that? It's quite clear what that is. So, again, I found that quite an odd one. I can understand why there would be thin skins on some of the other issues, particularly 240 million. If they think that they have invested, then fine. But I don't think that was a suggestion about them at all. And Jeff Shreves was at pains to point out that wasn't the case. The last one on there, the redevelopment of St Andrews. I don't doubt that they built 3 stands. I do not doubt that they added 22,000 seats. Do not doubt it for a second. But it doesn't really tell the story. It doesn't tell the story of what happened at Birmingham City. It doesn't tell the story of the discontent of Birmingham City fans. It doesn't tell the story of the fact there was protests. It didn't tell the story that actually they sold the club to Carsten Young, who ended up being in prison for financial irregularities. Because I think that's part of the narrative. That's part of the story of what went down at Birmingham City. I think if you just tell a little bit of the story, it is a little bit smoke and mirrors. Then you're saying, well, hold on, look, we built this fantastic stadium. Okay, well, that's part of it. 3/4 of a fantastic stadium, or whatever the case may be. But I don't think, again, it's really defending precisely what Matt Law was aiming at. And I do wonder how this will reconfigure the board's relationship with Sky. Because at some point they're going to need Sky. It might be to release something through press, release a story. There'll be something. That's got to be quite a close relationship. Because people say that people have short memories. They don't. They have long memories. Particularly if you've, humiliated them or crossed them or whatever. Hinted at legal action. I would imagine that would stick long in the memory. Not enough to say anything officially. I'm sure Sky Sports would openly say they are delighted to put the record straight and they would like to give an even, balanced platform to anyone and everyone. But Jeff Shreves wouldn't have wanted to do that. I'm pretty sure of that. Pretty sure he'd rather be discussing the transfer window. I bet they'd rather not be putting that. And I don't just mean in the middle of the programme, at the very start of the programme. Normally when stories are retracted and stories are amended, when apologies are sought in newspapers, it's 4 pages back. A little footnote in a column. It's not festooned across the back page, which is what you've got here. They open the programme with it. I just wonder how they've been their allies. And I do think a lot of this, letting everybody know they spent 240 million that they'd spent on the training ground, and it's not actually there for the experts, because anybody that would know that 10 million isn't a lot to spend over 2 training grounds. Maybe if you looked at what other people have spent, that net spend over what period, I'm sure lots of other clubs have spent comparable amounts. I'm sure 1.5 million on scouting. Again, if you leave it open to scrutiny, it's maybe not as much as many clubs would spend. But this is not information put out there for West Ham fans, because I think the board understand they've lost the West Ham fans. I think they know that. There will be some stragglers, there are some, but increasingly as time goes on, I think they appreciate that they're not going to get that relationship back. That the relationship with the West Ham fans has been completely severed. And stuff like this only makes it worse. Stuff like this only puts people on and builds up the numbers for the next protest, for the next demonstration. What I think this is about, it's about the wider footballing public. It's about your Sunderland, your Norwich, your Manchester City fan who don't know a lot about West Ham, but tunes into Match of the Day and maybe watches the Sunday supplement. It's about saying to them, we're good guys. We're good owners. We invest heavily in the club. But let's just take it that they have invested heavily in the club. Let's forget about all the other stuff. Even if we assume that 240 million is a lot of money to spend on players, even if we assume and take them at their word that 1.5 million is spent on scouting and that that's a good amount to spend, that 10 million on 2 training grounds over 10 years is a good amount and more than adequate, that Stuart Pearce was welcome, even if we assume all of that and everything was done right, it's very, very hard to read that and then look at it and think, well, hold on. They've been here 10 years. If that's the case, if we've spent so big, if we've got the scouting right, if we've got the training ground right, why, oh why, after 10 years, would we find ourselves in the relegation zone?